There's this famous story, you might have heard of it actually, about a Japanese man called Tsutomu Yamaguchi. He was working for the Mitsubishi company, and on this particular morning, he was on business in the city of Hiroshima. It was the 6th of August and he was running late for work. He'd forgotten something important and had to run home to pick it up. Then the owners of the boarding house he was staying in offered him some tea, and so out of politeness he sat down with them, making him even later. Then he got on a bus and then a streetcar, and he was still walking to the office when the flash of the atomic bomb, it was so intense, it did this strange thing all over the city. Shadows were literally burned into the walls. Even shadows of people, frozen at the moment they died. Tsutomu Yamaguchi was knocked to the ground and badly burned. He staggered through the ruins of Hiroshima. He didn't know what had happened, but he knew he had to get back to his family. He found the train station, and amazingly the trains were still running, and fought his way onto a train heading back to his hometown. A couple of 100 miles to the southwest, the city of Nagasaki. Now, being hit by an atomic bomb once is horrible, but twice in the space of a week? That's led some people to give Tsutomu Yamaguchi the dubious title of the unluckiest person in history. The problem, of course, is that when it comes to bad luck, being hit by an atomic bomb twice doesn't even come close. But if it's not him, who is it? To figure this out, we're going to have to look through a lot of history. It's funny, I've always thought of history as that catch-all word for the past. You know, it's just everything that's already happened. Turns out, I'm completely wrong about this. So, human beings have been around, we think, for about 200,000 years. But history? That's only 5,000 years old. It's strange, I know, but I promise it makes sense when you look at this. One of the places history started was in ancient Egypt. Now, you might think it's got something to do with farming, but that's not it. Look a bit closer. Can you see? We'd started writing things down. Recorded history, as it's called, can't exist without records. And we only started keeping those records, well, about 5,000 years ago. As for the 195,000 years before that, well, we don't really know anything for certain. Now, this is one of the earliest records anyone ever left behind, and it's an important clue in our search for history's unluckiest person. You see, a few years ago, the Population Reference Bureau tried to work out how many human beings have ever lived ever, and this was the number they came up with: 107,602,707,791. Now, in his book Cannibals and Kings, the anthropologist Marvin Harris estimated that 9 out of every 10 humans who've ever been alive have lived in the servile class. That means they were a peasant, a serf, a servant, or a slave. This tablet, one of the oldest records ever left by a human being, it's a receipt for the sale of another human being. 9 out of every 10 human lives ever. And if you were a peasant or a slave, chances are you never learned to read or write. And if you can't write, you can't leave records. And so you start to slip into history's long shadows. And so history ends up being skewed in favour of those who can leave something behind, usually those with money or power, usually men. If you weren't a rich white European man, then at best you were recorded, but as some kind of museum specimen. And at worst, well, it's amazing how much of history we just can't see. Fact is, we'll never know who the unluckiest person in history was. They probably lived a life so short and so cruel, and left so quickly, no one even thought they were worth remembering. Being hit by an atomic bomb twice is unlucky, but Tsutomu Yamaguchi survived all of this and lived until 2010. But more importantly, we remember who he was. At least 50,000 other people in Nagasaki were killed almost instantly. So quickly, they left nothing behind. but their shadow.